metalheads, and welcome to episode 23 of the Harsh Vocals Podcast. I'm your host, Justin Corbett, and with me is my good friend, Christian Renner. How are you doing today, man?
Better than I've been in a couple of weeks, and I'll give all the credit to the new Yathiri album. So
fair.
That.
Yeah, the last couple of weeks have definitely been better than the previous 2 weeks were. Work is still kicking my ass, but I'm only working 9 to 10 hour days versus 12 to 13 hour days. So definitely an improvement, although it still seems like too much. Because of that, I haven't really listened to as much music as I typically would, but the new Yathiri is killer, and it's definitely been the one I've listened to the most out of the current crop. Lots and lots of good stuff, though. Not necessarily the strongest of 2 weeks. I mean, there was a few good albums, a few really good albums, but it was just kind of a middle of the pack kind of cycle compared to what we've been experiencing the last few episodes. So that was actually kind of nice to have a little bit of a break considering how crazy work has been and everything.
Well, I can honestly say when we first started this, I seriously thought that, what happens if we don't find like 6 good, like amazing albums over 2 weeks. And, that's not even remotely been a possibility this entire year. And the amount of stuff that I have to cut is just shocking that, normally I'd be all in on, but yeah, if you got to make cuts, you got to make cuts. So I'm sure it will happen eventually. I mean, if we keep the show going for years, sometime in 2025 or 2026, we're going to come across a week where there's just nothing that really strikes our fancy, or maybe there'll be like one album that we both really like and everything else is just kind of going to be meh. And, I don't know what we'll do when that day comes, because 2024 has set us up for total failure in that scenario. We're going to have a whole episode, just like a best of episode.
Yeah, we'll have to fill in with some kind of
go back,
some kind of filler or something. Yeah. But as I said, there was a lot of good stuff that did get released. So let's go ahead and jump right into talking about it. We'll begin with Christian's picks. So the first one we're going to talk about is a band called Dread Mask. You want to start talking about them, Christian?
Sure. We have Dread Mask. The album is called Thy Prime Dread. We have Melodeath out of the Netherlands. And I've actually contacted this band to let them know that we're going to be playing them on the show.
Nice.
And they were 100% in, super excited about it. And this is a really, really good record. It's labeled as an EP, but it is 32 minutes long, which I've had full-length albums that are shorter.
That's been happening.
I don't know if this
has been happening a lot this year.
Supposedly an EP or not.
It's really like some places consider it an EP and other places consider it an album, and the bands themselves will often post it on social media and call it an album, but then Spotify will consider it an EP. And it's very confusing sometimes to figure out where something falls. We had a discussion about this with our writers and some of our followers in our Discord this past week, and kind of the consensus was that it was over the 30-minute mark. It was an album.
Yeah.
So
that's where I would go to.
It's a pretty good rule of thumb, I think.
Yeah. Now when I did the little bit of research on Metallum, I did notice that on the track that I picked. Well, let's just go with that. The track that I picked is called Reign of Fear. Now the band themselves on this album, it shows that they're independent, so not signed. But on their main page on Metallum, it says they're signed to a label called Wormhole Death. So I don't know if they're signed or not. I'm guessing they are because that's on their main page. But if you look, if you click on the album, Thy Prime Dread, it says it's independent. So I'm not.
Maybe they used to be and they no longer are. That kind of stuff happens all the time. Maybe. But you're right. It is a fantastic album. This is one that I really enjoyed a lot. It's been a while since we've had a very solid melodic death metal album. There's been several this year, but not in the last 2 months or so. So it was kind of a nice breath of fresh air to get one that was so good right out of the gates. I felt like the album didn't have a lot of bloat. It was edited really well. The production on it was fantastic. Everything about it was very enjoyable. I mean, it's still melodic death metal, so it is kind of less exciting genre, I guess, than some others.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say it's less exciting. It's just one of those deals where you kind of know exactly what to expect. Yeah. And, as long as you hit those tentpole marks, you have a solid melodic death metal album.
It was definitely a solid Melodeath album, and I got exactly what I was looking for out of this. So I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah. I mean, this album, for me personally, this thing had riffs for days. And what they do very, very well is they have a very good understanding of what really drives melodeath as a genre. And I think that's kind of where you're getting with that. You kind of knew what to expect because they definitely know what melodeath is. And, you know, they're hitting all those marks. I hear quite a bit of Wolfheart in this, in their sound, but every so often I hear a bit of that album from earlier this year, Eternal Storm, as well. I'll actually get that a little bit in there too. There's a tinge of melodic black metal in this, not in their sound as well, which I really appreciate, and how it keeps things interesting. It's not a lot in there, but it's maybe a 30-second passage here, or I dove deep into this record. I probably listened to this record about 30 times. Wow. So I really, really like this one. And plus, it was an easy listen. It's one of those albums that, you know, goes by, and, you know, when it's over, you're like, damn, it's already done, you know.
Put it back on.
And honestly, far and away, the guitar work is the real highlight on this entire album. And that's courtesy of a guy named John Corentis, who does the lead, and a guy named Zoltan Herzog on rhythm. Just wanted to shout them out for fantastic work. And this song, Reign of Fear, it's a perfect example. It's got that great riff, fantastic guitar solo. I mean, this is a really, really good album. And I could see this band, you know, really pushing. Like it shows on the thing. They have 3 singles in this EP. That's all they have right now. So, well, and it's, again, listed as an EP. I think it's a full album, but go out and support these guys. This is a really damn good record.
Yeah, like I said, I enjoyed it a lot. Now that you say the Eternal Storm comparison, I don't necessarily think it compares well to A Giant Bound to Fall, but I think it compares well to their first album. It has a lot of the same sorts of sounds that were on that one built into this, and I never really made that connection until you mentioned it, but I can hear that now too. And there are a couple of passages that sort of have the phrasing, for lack of a better term, that feels like melodic black metal. I just dig it. I think it was really good. They definitely have the potential to push some boundaries, but at its core, it's just melodic death metal like you expect it to be, which just makes it fun and enjoyable and a quick and easy listen. So let's go ahead and play the track. This is a great way to start the show. Again, this is Dread Mask off their album Thy Prime Dread, and the song we're going to play is called Reign of Fear. Hope you guys enjoy it.
That darkest hour, to the bottom of the pit, where everything is lost, all are in vain. We are the moment that we hit the bottom. Allow blast to break the silence. Thousands screams and from below, staring the future. We are you.
that flowed in to fill it.
That's a fun track. That was a great pick.
Yeah, those guitars are just so damn good.
Yeah, I really dug that.
Yeah.
All right, well, moving on to my first pick of the show. This is a band that I cannot pronounce the name of, so I'm going to let Christian say it.
Schlechtwald.
Something like that. It's SLECHTVALK, and they put out an album called At Death's Gate. So this is going to be kind of surprising to some people. This is melodic Christian black metal from the Netherlands. You know, we've talked before that we don't really discriminate about, you know, religious topics, whether it's going to be Satanism or Christian music, although it is extremely rare to find a Christian black metal band that is actually good. This one definitely is.
Yeah.
So this album, it's very interesting and almost progressive in some places, melodic black metal. The vocals are harsh and abrasive and cold, like you kind of expect them to be from black metal. Some of the time they're singing in Norwegian, other times they're singing in English. So you get kind of a mixture of that. You get the harsher language, the Nordic kind of sounding vocals, and then the English ones and some of the clean passages. There are a little bit of metalcore influences on some of the songs because there are pieces that are clean sung, but they're not badly done. So I actually enjoyed them, which is, again, a rare thing because I typically only like harsh vocals in my music. But I thoroughly enjoyed this. The name of the band, Slechtvalk.
Schlecht. It's kind of it's German, which is kind of weird.
It is weird. Well, it translates to peregrine falcon. That's actually what it's supposed to translate to, according to Metallum. I didn't know that. But it's a solo project, and it's actually their 6th full-length album since 2002. They do have 2 live members who play, you know, their concerts with them, but it's one guy writing all the music and performing it all for the recordings. And I'm honestly blown away because this is extremely well produced, a lot of fun, and just really catchy melodic black metal. If I didn't look it up, there's no way I would have known this is a Christian black metal project. So if I can enjoy the music, knowing that fact, you know, I don't think it's going to hurt anybody else to do the same. So did you get a chance to listen to this one, Christian?
Yeah, I dug it. I wasn't a big fan of the production, but it was good. You know, the music was really well done. I got a lot of bits of Enslaved in there, and you know, and especially a little bit of Borknagar. Maybe not as polished as Borknagar are, but you know, how they write their songs, how they put them together is kind of what I got out of it. But I do hear a lot more of the older Enslaved.
Yeah, that's those progressive elements I was talking about. That stuff's definitely built into there, but I mean, it's very melodic, very pretty in places, also very harsh and abrasive in others. I'm honestly kind of surprised it's a Christian black metal band.
Yeah,
because it sounds like a, you know, non-Christian black metal band. You know, but I guess that really only applies to the subject matter of the lyrics. Yeah, musically they're fantastic. If you're not bothered by that fact, I highly recommend checking them out. So again, let's go ahead and play the track. This is Slechtvalk. That's just how I'm going to pronounce it. At Death's Gate, their album, and the song name is called Death. Hope you guys enjoy it.
I get influence for
not really sure 100% what they meant by Schlechtwald, because that's actually a German word, and as far as I know, that doesn't mean peregrine falcon. Schlecht means like when you feel bad, you feel schlecht. Volk, I'm not sure what they're meaning there, but schlecht means you feel bad.
Well, would Volk mean like
I'm not sure.
To take a walk, like to take a walk when you feel bad?
No, I'm not. I'm not exactly sure what they mean by that. I'd have to look it up.
That's interesting.
It's been a while since I've been to Germany, so.
Well, you might be going back if your GoFundMe kicks in.
Yeah, who knows? And just for anybody that's wondering, I did put a GoFundMe up as a kind of a joke after what happened with our elections here, telling some Trump people if they would like to get rid of an immigrant, fund my GoFundMe and I'll go back to Germany, not a problem. So, I mean, it was a joke, and it is what it is. But hey, Elon, if you're listening, hook me up, bro.
Yeah. It's unlikely, but
you're giving away millions of dollars at rallies, so you can hook me up.
Nothing's impossible these days, right?
You never know. You never know.
All right. Well, moving on. The next album is another Christian's Picks. This is the band Disparaged. They put out an album called Down the Heavens. I like this one a lot. I'll let you talk about it, though.
Yeah. This was really close to being my favorite of these 2 weeks, but Yatheria came out, and I'm a huge Yatheria fan. So, like Justin said, the album is called Down the Heavens. We have mellow death with just straight up some regular death metal out of Switzerland. The track that I picked is called The Throne. This is their 6th full-length album since 2003. And I feel like I've heard this band before, but it's not really registering with me. But with the amount of music that I listen to, that's really not a huge surprise. But I went back and listened to a few of their other albums as well, and they were all pretty good. But I do think this one here they got something special here. This one here is hands down, I think, their best album.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Not saying their other stuff is bad. It's just not on this level. It seriously feels like they've leveled up dramatically on this record. There's a lot going on here. There's moments that remind me of Hypocrisy, as well as, the band Bloodbath. And even, is going to sound a little bit weird, but even a little bit of Arch Enemy here and there. With the catchiness, that catchiness that Arch Enemy throws
Jeff
in there.
Loomis style guitars. Yeah, I can see that. And just fantastic album all the way through. If you're into, heavier sounding mellow death, this will be right up your alley. And I am. And it was.
Yeah.
No, I listened to this one 3 times. I wish I had spent more time with it, but I immediately liked it after the first listen, and then I listened to it again, and then I went back and listened to their previous album once, and then I listened to this one more time. I wish I had had more time to spend with it, but work's just been minimizing how much listening I can do. But after one listen, I knew this was going to end up as a pick for one of us, and you chose it, so that's fine. But it's definitely one of the better ones that came out in this cycle, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to spending more time with this between the end of the year and now.
I didn't look, but is this available on vinyl? Because I'd purchase this on vinyl.
I don't believe so. I looked the night when I first heard it, and I couldn't find it anywhere. So, I mean, I could be wrong, but I couldn't find it myself.
Which would be kind of shocking for a band that has 6 albums out. But you never know.
Mm-hmm. Vinyl production has gotten more and more expensive over the years, so it's becoming more common to see bands that are, established not putting out vinyl records, which is unfortunate because that's my primary, way of actually supporting the bands.
Yeah, that's me as well, besides shows.
Yeah.
And in my area, shows are kind of few and far between, so.
Yeah. Well, anyways, let's go ahead and play the track. Again, this is Disparaged off the album Down the Heavens, and the name of the song is The Throne. killer death metal, man. I absolutely love that. It makes me want to go back and re-listen to the album again. So that's probably what I'll do tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, just that super catchy riff, and you know, I will freely admit that like one of the things that I absolutely positively love about thrash metal is I'm a big fan of what I like to call the big dumb riff. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be super like, wow, how is he even doing that? But if it's a really good riff that just works for you, I'm here for it.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's a lot of fun and definitely one that I will spend more time with. But
yeah.
Speaking of death metal, let's go ahead and move on to my next pick. The band Paganizer. They're extremely well established. You know, they've been around since 1999. This is actually their 13th full-length album. It's called Flesh Requiem. This one was another one that grabbed me, you know, from the first time I heard it. Luckily, I got the promo for this months ago when I actually had more time to dedicate to things. And I was able to listen to it several times back then, and then again several times when it dropped last week. And this album is just excellent. I do think that there's probably 2 songs too many on the album. It would do with just a little bit of editing, but even the weakest link songs on the album are still very good. And speaking of big dumb riffs, I mean, this album's full of them. It's not exactly fun death metal as we've been calling things like Undeath or 200 Stab Wounds. It's a lot more in the vein of like progressive death metal, but also more like standard straightforward death metal. Less fun, more dark and heavy. But I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, I hear a lot of Entombed in this. They definitely worship at that throne. And again, Bloodbath. You know, when they do get into a little bit of fun elements, you can definitely hear some Bloodbath in there.
100%.
But yeah, fantastic album.
Let's go ahead and play the track. The one that I picked is called World Scythe because I feel like it's the one that best encapsulates the entire album. It shows you a little bit of the progressive stuff, a little bit of the melodic stuff they do, but it's also straightforward in places. And it's also my favorite song on the album. So hope you guys enjoy it. Again, this is Paganizer off their album Flesh Requiem, and the song is World Scythe.
Never ends.
Yeah, there we go. Paganizer. If you don't like that, you may want to check your pulse. You might be dead. That is definitely, some aggressive death metal, and I hope you all liked it.
I did. I guess that's all that matters.
Yeah.
All right, well, moving on. Christian's last pick, and honestly, this probably would have been my pick of the week as well if I had to pick one. Yatheria. As we mentioned at the beginning of the show, this album is just killer, and it was one that we knew was going to be killer. We were waiting for it eagerly. It did not disappoint.
Yeah. We have Yatheria. The album is called Blazing Inferno. We have black metal from Greece. And as we've discussed multiple times, just about everything coming out of Greece is pretty fucking amazing, apparently. Mm-hmm. They must have the best fucking metal scene there. It's got to be crazy. The track that I picked is Purgatory Revolution. This here album is a follow-up to my personal album of the year for 2021, the album As the Flame Withers, which, believe it or not, I still spin that album maybe once every couple of weeks or so. I just absolutely love that album. And that song, The Mantis, gets me every single damn time. I just love the build-up on that. This here is a band featuring Jim Mutilator. And their previous album also featured The Magus. Both these guys are from Rotting Christ, along with multiple other bands, Verathron. I mean, they're all over the Greek metal scene. So, but this one here, for some odd reason, the Magus is not part of this one. And I'm not exactly sure if there was, he just didn't have time, or he doesn't want to do it, or I don't know. But he has set up a full band now. On their last album, it just had Jim Mutilator and the Magus listed as members of the band. Now they have a full lineup. I'm not sure if this was, originally supposed to just be a side project between Jim Mutilator and the Magus, because they're in so many other bands.
Well, they definitely don't treat it like a side project. The music is top tier regardless. Both albums are fantastic. I personally feel like Blazing Inferno is actually a stronger album than As the Flame Withers. I know you might disagree with that because I know that's one of your all-time favorites. But Blazing Inferno, man, every single time this album has come on, like I said, I've been listening to a lot of older music the past couple weeks, and every time I would play an old album and Spotify would play the last track, it would just start playing random music. For some reason, every single time it played a track off Blazing Inferno. And so I would just turn on the Yatheria album and listen to it again, and I never got tired of it. It is fun, it's catchy, it's dark, it's evil and ominous. It's all the stuff you want from Yatheria. They're definitely their own thing. I mean, you still kind of hear that influence from the Rotting Christ sound. It's still there. It sounds like, they're definitely inspired by what they did in those projects as well, but this is its own thing. And there's a lot of things in here that are very distinct and unique to Yatheria that you wouldn't hear on a Rotting Christ album or on a Verathron album for sure. So I loved this. I loved this Yatheria album. I like it way more than the first one, and it's probably one that will end up very high on my end of year list.
I mean, the big thing for me on this one here, I'm guessing that maybe I just had super, super high expectations because of how much I loved As the Flame Withers. And so this album was not an instant love for me. I really liked it, but it wasn't like an instant, holy shit, kind of thing. But the more you listen to it, the better this album gets. It's one of those. And now If I listen to Dread Mask about 30 times this week, I probably listen to this about 40 or 50 times this week. It just seemed like every other album I listened to, I would make it Yatheria. And then especially when the vinyl arrived, and it sounds absolutely fantastic on vinyl, but I think it actually sounds a little bit better digitally. Not really sure why that is, but I do seem to enjoy the album just very, very slightly more digitally than I do on vinyl, which is usually not the case for me.
Yeah, I've never heard you say that before. It's always the other way around.
Yeah. And I'm not, I can't really pinpoint why that is. It's just, maybe it's just because, when I'm listening digitally, I'm usually listening to a very high quality set of headphones. And so maybe I'm catching more of, because they have a lot of, in their songwriting, they have a lot of things that they do. Symphonic elements that they throw in there, maybe even just little sounds, like, on the...
There's like three tracks where he's like playing some... There's 3 tracks on this album where he's playing some instrument that I can't pinpoint what it is. And it almost sounds kind of like a kazoo, but it's not a kazoo. I know that sounds insane, but it has a similar tone to a kazoo. It's just way darker and richer sounding than what a kazoo would sound like. And it's just so weird, but it works so perfectly in the music they're creating. You're right. They do a lot of really unique things in this album that you don't really hear elsewhere.
And I honestly think that's why I like it digitally better, just because I hear it a little bit better. Vinyl, you're listening through speakers, you have ambient sound around you, so there's only so much of that you're going to pick up on, while digitally, you're almost in your own little world. And so I don't know, it just kind of worked better for me digitally than it did vinyl.
Yeah,
but either way,
well,
incredible album.
I haven't purchased it on vinyl yet. I haven't gotten around to actually buying it, but I'm going to. Even though you're saying it's not as good as digital, I'm still going to buy it.
Well, I'm sure it's one of those things where, as it goes along, because, technically speaking, As the Flame Withers is better digitally as well, because there are a lot of moments in that where a good set of headphones will really, especially, the song that I mentioned just a little bit ago, the Mantis, the way that song builds, with the whispering in the very beginning, you wouldn't necessarily hear that if it's kind of loud while you're playing the vinyl.
It's true.
If, there's background stuff, and how that builds up, and that evil kind of sound that they get from that, you probably wouldn't notice as much as you would if you're wearing headphones. Yeah. So, maybe that's it.
Well, let's go ahead and let people hear a song from the album and decide for themselves. If you've never heard Yatheria before, I think you're in for a treat. If you enjoy this, absolutely check out the whole album. Go back and check out As the Flame Withers, because it's also a fantastic album. Although the sounds have changed somewhat between the two albums, they're still very much the same band.
I think the vocals are better.
Yeah, the vocals in my opinion, are much better on the second album, and I think that's probably why I like it more. But let's go ahead and play the track again. This is Yatheria off their latest album, Blazing Inferno. And the track that we're going to play is called Purgatory Revolution. So enjoy it. God, yeah, I want to go back and hear the whole album again. I'm gonna spend some time tonight listening to the stuff I really enjoyed from the past 2 weeks, I think. All right, so moving on. The last album we're going to talk about is one that we both really enjoyed. This was definitely my second favorite album of the cycle. Band called Carved Memories. They put out an album called The Moire. This is melodic, somewhat blackened death metal from Costa Rica / Berlin. They're an international band. This is their debut album. They've put out one self-titled EP prior to this. They've been around since 2017. This thing, from the minute I heard it, it just grabbed onto me, and it lived rent-free in my head. Much like the Yatheria album, I returned to it over and over again. This was definitely the second most listened to album for me of this cycle. It's really catchy. It's really interesting what they do in some of the songs. The progressive elements are there in some of the songs. The blackened elements are there in some of the songs. There's even some passages that are very drum-centric, where it's almost like technical death metal. They're very focused on the blast beats and, making sure the timing is correct on the drums. There's a lot going on here, and it's so complex and diverse from track to track that I just couldn't get enough of it. I never got bored with any part of this. It's incredibly well edited, incredibly well produced, and incredibly well written. I am astonished at how good this is, considering this is a debut release from these guys. Did you get a chance to listen to this one at all, Christian?
I did, but I didn't write down any notes for this. I'm not exactly sure why, but I do remember that I was super impressed with the songwriting to the point where it seriously felt like it was an album written by a band on their fifth or sixth album. Like, maybe these guys have just been working on these songs for so long, and like sometimes you get that out of debut albums where they've lived with these songs for 10 years, who knows. And so maybe that's it. But if this is what we have to expect from this band going forward, it won't take long before these guys are way more well known than they are currently.
Agreed. This album, I probably listened to it 15 or 20 times, which is a low number for me, for an album that I truly enjoy, in a week-long cycle. But because of how busy I've been, I didn't get to dedicate as much time as I typically would. But I honestly couldn't get enough of this. This has been added to my contender list for like my best of for the year. I thoroughly enjoyed this album. So it's definitely one I'm going to spend more time with as the year progresses. And who knows, it might actually even end up on my top 30 list. So can't say enough good things about this. For a debut, it's beyond impressive. I hope you guys check it out and listen to the whole album. The track that I picked is called The Raven. I felt like this one was a good illustrative track because it does start with sort of a more atmospheric melody, and then it builds into like a more blackened section before becoming more of a traditional melodeath song. It kind of encompasses everything they do on the album, but no songs are the same. They're all very diverse and interesting. So if you like this at all, I highly recommend checking out the album. I think you'll find a lot to appreciate. Again, this is Carved Memories off the album The Moire, and the track that I picked is The Raven. I hope you guys enjoy it. Yeah, man, week after week, there's always like 3 or 4 albums that are just, so good that they're capable of making our best of list. I am dreading trying to finish my end of the year list.
Oh, I've gone back a little bit here and there, and I've been trying to slowly do it by taking, like a couple of weeks ago, I did all the albums that we picked from January and February, and just listen to those. And Jesus Christ, there's just so much good music this year. I keep joking about it, but I could see myself having a 62-way tie for first place or some shit. It's that insane.
Yeah, I've already committed myself that I'm gonna make a top 30 list for all the social media and the podcast and everything. We're going to do our top 30 discussion like we did last year.
Yeah.
But I'm also planning on doing a top 100 list because I don't think it's fair to the year 2024 to try to limit it to 30 because there's so much overflow of albums that are of comparable quality. There's at least 80 or 90 albums that are all like 4.5s or better out of 5 this year. Like, it's just stupid how much good music has come out. Yeah. I have a playlist of about 600 albums right now that are all, in the 3.5 or better category out of 5. And I've been going through that and assigning point values to every album, trying to narrow it down to make that list. And I'm about a third of the way through, but we're already in the middle of November. I've only got a month and a half left, and I've still got, 3 more cycles of music to listen to before the end of the year. So it's a challenge to get through this and figure out how we're going to do it. But I swear, even looking at this week, like, Yaw Theory is definitely a contender. Carved Memory is definitely a contender. Paganizer is definitely a contender. Disparaged is definitely going to make like top 100. It's just so much stuff, and every single week it's the same. And this is what we're considering like a week compared to the rest of the year. It's just nuts. It's nuts.
It's too much.
Too much.
Too much. Too much. Good
I don't
stuff.
want to hope that 2025 is not as strong as 2024, but secretly I'm kind of hoping that it's a few less good albums per per month.
Well, hell, I was on Amazon just yesterday and saw The Halo Effect has a new album coming out beginning of January. And it's like, son of a bitch already? Like, I absolutely positively love their last album. So super looking forward to that.
Harakiri has an album coming
Destruction
out.
has a new album.
Yeah.
Destruction has one coming out in March, I guess. Originally, I think that was supposed to come out this year, but it got pushed off. I mean, next week we got Opeth with a new album. We got, oh, Jesus Christ, a power metal band that I'm super impressed by called Fellowship. They got a new album coming out next week too.
Normally November,
it just keeps going and going and
November
going.
and December are where things start to slow down, especially like the last month of the year. You know, we'll get like 30 releases instead of 150. And so it's much easier to like cut down and condense. So hopefully that'll be the case this year, and we'll have some time to focus on the older stuff so we can build our end of year list. I don't know if you saw, but Decibel actually put out their top 40 list for the year already. And that was like on November 10th, which is just nuts.
Yeah, that's too early.
It's too early.
That's too early. I mean, you got 7 more weeks of metal to go. What are you doing?
Yeah. I guess they had to be the first. So,
Yeah.
all right, well, let's move on to our honorable mentions. I'll let you go through your list first. We'll try to keep this short because we've still got a lot to talk about with our topic.
Yep. I'll go through this as quickly as I can here. I'm not going to talk too much about it, but started off with a band called Inner Wish. The album is called Ash of Eternal Flame. We have heavy/power metal from Greece. Again, everything from Greece is really, really good, so just buy everything from Greece. If you like bands like Firewind or Brainstorm, you will like this. I'll go off on a little tangent here. Inner Wish used to be a lot more flowery and a lot more proggy, but they've kind of ramped up the aggression on this a little bit. And so like if you like that heavier sounding power metal, you will like this, especially like Brainstorm. Brainstorm has that kind of aggressive thing. Next, we have Sudakra. Glad to see this band is back. The album is called Darkanakrad. I'm not sure. Darkanakrad. If you can follow that, good luck. We have Melodeath with some folk influences from Germany. If you like bands like Maingarm or Winter Sun, so like if you were disappointed by the latest Winter Sun album, listen to Sudakra. It'll change your mind. Then we have Impellitteri. The album is called War Machine. We have heavy power metal from the USA. If you like Racer X or Cacophony, you would definitely like Impellitteri. And again, a lot like Inner Wish, Impellitteri used to be like super, super proggy. I mean, the guys have insanely good guitar player, but this one again is a little bit heavier. So if you like that heavier sound, and I guess maybe the title of the album War Machine kind of gives a clue, but it's a heavier sound. Then we have Frostbite, Relentless Grief. We have black metal from Canada. If you like bands like Obscura or Necrophagist, or you'll definitely like Frostbite. Then we have a band called Grave Cult, but Cult, the cult part spelled with a V, so just so you know.
So they're true.
If you're looking these up, yeah. God, I hate when bands do that. Don't make it harder to find your music. The album is called Full Moon Fever. This here is black and roll from France, and I'm a huge, huge fan of black and roll. And just think of it as a more polished Midnight. That's what I got out of it.
Interesting.
Paragon, Metalation. I've loved this band for a very, very long time. It's just that traditional heavy power metal mixed with a little bit of speed metal from Germany. If you like bands like Gravedigger, Mystic Prophecy, or even that American band Cage, you will find something to like here. Stranger Vision, Faust, Act 1. We have melodic heavy metal from Italy. If you like Nocturnal Rites, Jagdpanzer, or progressive power metal band called Simforce from back in the day, I don't even know if they're still active, but if you remember them, you'll like this Stranger Vision album. Spitfire, the album called Trinity. We have thrash/speed metal from Germany. Think of a heavier metal church or the German band Paradox, and you will definitely find out what Spitfire is all about. Brothers in Metal, Thimble Vinter, heavy power metal from Sweden. Think of bands like Bloodbound mixed with a little bit of Hammerfall catchiness, and you got Brothers in Metal. And then finally, we have a deathcore band from Canada, A Scar for the Wicked. I came across this super late. I only listened to this 3 or 4 times, but it super, super impressed me. The album is called Acolythus.
I think.
Acolythus.
Yeah. They sent out like a ton of promotional stuff. They were really pushing this album, all the promo companies. And I listened to this back in, I don't know, early October or so. I really enjoyed it. I had completely forgotten about it. Didn't realize it came out this past week, but it's a great album. And I'm not even a huge deathcore fan. I really like the symphonic elements in this, though. It's very, very good.
Yeah, it's very, very well done. And that's it for me.
Okay. Lots of good stuff. Some things that I hadn't even heard, but I don't always listen to the same stuff that you do. My honorable mentions, let's just jump in. Rotborn was number 1. They put out an album called Shrapnels of a Panic Spiral. This is death metal from Brazil, their second full-length album since 2021. This one I would kind of categorize as that fun death metal. It's pretty enjoyable. There's just some bloat on the album. There's probably 2 or 3 too many tracks. It could do with some editing, but it's a really good album overall. Next is the band Slaughter the Giant. They put out an album called Abomination. It's melodic black and death metal from Belgium, their second full-length since 2019. This one...
Yeah, I really like this one.
Was really close to being a pick. This is another one of those that was like debatable whether it's an EP or a full length. The band was calling it an album, so I'm calling it an album as well. I think it was 31 minutes as well. It's very short, but a lot of great tracks. And if they wrote a longer album, I would be very excited to hear that. These guys are on my radar now, and I'm looking forward to whatever they do next.
Yep.
Next is the band Chaos Invocation. They put out an album called Whenever We Roam. This is satanic black metal from Germany, their 5th full-length album since 2009. These guys are part of the AOP group of bands. So obviously I was aware of them and listened to this album as soon as I possibly could. It's fantastic. There was only 3 spots for my picks this week. This one was a contender for sure. I just kind of enjoyed the other one that I can't pronounce a little bit more. Schlechtbach or whatever. But Chaos Invocation was very close to being a pick. This is a great album. If you like satanic black metal, melodic satanic black metal, you'll enjoy this.
So what you're saying is Jesus
did win this time. Next is Ad Vitam Infernal. They put out an album called Les Ballets des Angels, death metal from France. This album is about 80% amazing and 20% bloated and in need of editing. The good stuff is so fucking good, but the bad stuff is like really hard to So if they just edited it slightly, man, this would be such a masterpiece of an album. It's so close. Next is the band Vampirska. They put out an album called A Liminal Heart Prints the Deeps and Shades of Serenity. That's a mouthful. This is raw vampiric black metal from Nashville, Tennessee, which when I saw it was from Nashville, I said, I wonder if they know Sidan. And then I looked, and it's fucking hundo-sized side project. So it's the drummer from Sidan's side project, and oh my God, his writing chops are just as good as Splatterpunk's. Like, this album is killer. It's just raw black metal, and if you don't like raw black metal, you're probably not going to enjoy it. But if you like raw black metal, this is one of the best of the year, in my opinion. The song structure is incredible. The lyrics and the vocals are excellent. Everything's vampire themed, which I think is kind of hundo-sized thing. I loved this. Did you listen to this one, Christian?
I'm not a fan of the rawness of it, but yeah, I listened to it, I think 2 or 3 times. Of course, like I said, the rawness kind of takes me out of it, but yeah, his writing, I was shocked at.
For being,
and I really shouldn't be, because
we just kind of assumed he was
we just
kind of assumed he was the drummer for Sidan. We didn't really know that he had writing chops in other musical avenues, but he could play guitar great, he can drum great, he sings well, and the songs are really, really well done. I would prefer Polish black metal. I think these days I just like that more, which is why it didn't end up as a pick, and it's just an honorable mention. But I still like raw black metal from time to time, and this is the best raw black metal album I've heard this year. So if I was going to make that as a separate category, this would be my number 1. If you like raw black metal, do not skip this album. It's great. Next is the band Therathon. They put out an album called Laconic. This is black metal from Greece. As we said, everything from Greece gets a gold star. This is their second full length since 2021. It's very akin to Septic Flesh, I guess, more so than the Rotting Christ sort of sound. but it's also doing some more melodic death metal stuff instead of just being like a Septic Flesh clone. They did some interesting things in this album. It's not perfect. They're still developing their sound, but it's really good. Definitely worthy of being an honorable mention. And then the last album was from the band Efialtes. They put out an album called Melas Oneros. I'm sure I'm butchering that. It's melodic black and death metal from Poland. It's their debut album. Some of the songs are in that fun death metal realm, and other songs are more in like a melodic black metal realm. So I think these guys are another one that are kind of like deciding what their sound is going to be. But all of the songs are really well written and really, really well produced. It's just I don't think they've found their sound yet. So whenever they do, I'm excited to see what that is, because this album was great. It's just a wild mixture of different things.
I completely missed that one.
You should check it out. I think you'd like it a lot.
Yeah.
And that does it for our honorable mentions. So lots of good stuff to check out this week, as usual. So if you find anything you like from our recommendations, please let us know.
It never stops.
It never stops. All right, so let's move into our topic. A couple of episodes ago, we did the most influential albums from the past up until 1995. We're resuming that with part 2 on this episode, where we're doing 1995 till the present. And I kind of wish we had broken this out a little bit from like 1995 to 2010 and then 2010 onwards, because my God, there's a lot of albums. So I'm sure that we're leaving things off this list. It is not a perfect list by any means, and there are definitely things that we're not going to mention that you guys would think are super important and influential. If that's the case, feel free to tell us and we can, rectify it or mention it in a future episode. But based on what my knowledge of metal is, based on Christian's knowledge of metal, based on what is generally considered the best albums from that era, this is the list we came up with, and it's about 35 albums total. So again, it's not perfect. We're going to skip some things, but we're going to do our best to go through it. So starting with number 1, back in 1995, At the Gates, Slaughter of the Soul. Obviously a super important melodic death metal album, inspirational for so many other bands. We did kind of talk about the beginning of that era on the end of the last episode. These guys were part of that, but I don't think we gave them the attention that they deserved in that portion where we talked about it last time. So obviously At the Gates is just killer melodeath. They kind of developed the formula that so many other melodeath bands have built upon in the modern era. And this album's highly influential. I mean, would you agree with me on that, Christian?
Absolutely. This here, I would say this here is the album that really cemented the Gothenburg sound of what melodic death metal is. And it just went from here, and people took it in much further directions. But this is where, I think this here is where you could say the Gothenburg sound really took hold, and it just went forward from there. So I would actually give this album as the Gothenburg sound, the melodic death metal. All of a sudden everything started coming out of Sweden, and the amount of incredible bands that spawned is super impressive.
I mean, they had contemporaries that were around slightly before them or at the same time as them. I mean, In Flames, Soilwork, Dark Tranquility. We talked about all those in the last episode. And all of those bands were putting out things that sounded sort of similar. I mean, we talked about how insular that scene must have been because they were all influencing each other and inspiring each other to write sort of similar sounding music. But At the Gates, this particular album, Slaughter of the Soul, I feel like it was the one that sort of solidified what that sound intended to be. And when the rest of the world heard it, that's when that sound became defined as the Gothenburg sound. Yeah.
I mean, as you went forward, you had Dark Tranquility and Flames that added more melody, and, it just, ramped all that up. But, it all came back to this.
Agreed. All right, so moving on to the next one, we have Meshuggah's Destroy, Erase, Improve. Whether you like Meshuggah or not, their influence is undeniable. This album basically created math metal. It was highly influential, and they spawned a ton of clones, and, they're still having an impact today. I mean, there's people that absolutely love Meshuggah. They have their own cult following, to be honest, but there's a lot of people that don't really quite get it either. I've always been kind of a fair weather Meshuggah fan. Like, there have been certain albums that I've really loved and other ones that have just kind of been indifferent to. But it's, it's undeniable that they changed metal forever by incorporating, competing time signatures and music that was at odds with itself that somehow still worked. They definitely changed the scene.
Yeah. And if you're a drummer, this Meshuggah blew your fucking mind, because you're just like, what the fuck was that? It was, the odd time signatures and all that stuff. And I mean, I'm blanking on the guy's name, the drummer for them, but Jesus Christ, hands down one of the best drummers in the world. I mean, it's just shocking. Yeah. And nobody was doing this. Nobody.
Yep. All right, so moving on. The next album is White Zombie's Astro Creep 2000 from 1995. Now, this kind of falls more into the rock and roll category than the metal category, but there's definitely metal attributes to White Zombie. Yeah. And I mean, this may not even be the right album to talk about with them. I mean, they had Super Beasto before this one and several after this one that were critically important as well.
There's a big song that came off of this one that kind of blew up. I can't remember what the fuck it's called either.
More Human Than Human.
Yeah, More Human Than Human. That is such a catchy fucking song. I'm not a big White Zombie fan, but More Human Than Human was a fantastic song. It was just, you couldn't help but like it, even if you didn't want to. You would just make sure that your friends didn't know that you liked it. And
well, I don't know if that's even true. I mean, back in 1995, I was 13 years old, so I was just discovering, my pathway towards heavier music, and Nine Inch Nails, Metallica, White Zombie, those were all bands that were formative for me, and leading me on my path to discovering more extreme music. So I was a big White Zombie fan. I was a big fan of Rob Zombie when he broke off and started doing his solo work. Up until his third solo album, I really enjoyed everything he put out. And I still listen to everything he puts out to at least give it a chance, although my ear has changed and I don't really enjoy it the same way I used to. That whole psychedelic, sexy time, rock metal hybrid thing he does works great for some stuff, but not for everything. But
yeah,
White Zombie definitely pushed boundaries and developed their own sound and created something that didn't sound like anybody else, and has inspired thousands of bands to, be experimental and create their own sounds and their own unique stuff. So their influence is definitely felt, even still today.
Yeah, and see, and there's a perfect example of our age difference. You were 13 at that time. I was 25, and so amongst my peers, we were at that time, early 90s to mid 90s. We were lamenting the kind of death of metal at that point, because it was off of MTV. Headbangers Ball was no longer a thing, and it was starting to die out. So it was a lot harder to find music at that time. And so this is what MTV was kind of pushing. And so, the older metalheads or whatever, you damn kids and your loud music,
all of them were stuck into that, thrash is the only metal kind of thing. And, anything that wasn't thrash wasn't cool.
Iron Maiden and Judas Priest is the only thing that matters, and so I'll freely admit I was not a black metal fan back then. It was just not a thing. So
yeah, I mean, everybody starts somewhere, and it's a journey. That's the cool thing about metal is once you get to a point where you are far enough into your journey, you can look back and see exactly how you progressed from where you started to where you are now.
Yeah,
and most metalheads have a similar story. It's just they may end up at a different point than you. Somewhere you make a decision whether you're going to be a power metal fan or a black metal fan. And then, you kind of go down that path. It's very divergent, but we all have formative albums and albums that push us further along our road. So White Zombie's Astro Creep 2000 was one for me, for sure.
Or if you're like you and I, we like it all. So
I don't really know if I like power metal. I like the occasional power metal album.
Oh, there's certain ones. I mean, you wouldn't turn around and go, Jesus Christ, that's some bullshit. Yeah, you wouldn't go there. You would just say, it's not for me.
I can appreciate what it is and who it's for. It's just not always for me. That's very true.
Yeah.
So moving on, another band that is not exactly metal, but is metal adjacent, Tool, put out their album Anima in 1996. They were another band that did their own completely different thing from anybody else, created a fully unique sound and has inspired thousands of other bands to do the same, much like Rob Zombie.
Yeah.
I'm not the biggest Tool fan. There are certain songs that I enjoy, but I grew up in that era where, Schism and Parabola were playing on the radio, and I enjoyed those, and I still enjoy those. I'm just not visiting them as often as I used to.
I will freely admit their first probably 2-3 albums, I was a very big fan of. Their production technique of making that bass super heavy on their first, especially like songs like Prison Sex, that grinding kind of sound, and then, that heavy bass, that super heavy bass, that really worked. But as it's gone on, I find them a bit tedious now.
Especially their last couple albums. They were just not good. But their early stuff, it deserves its place in this list.
Yeah.
So moving on, next is Emperor, Anthem to the Welkin at Dusk. Yep. Emperor is arguably the most well-liked of all of the original black metal bands. They have a huge following. People still support Isan today. He wasn't burning churches. He wasn't a murderer. He didn't do any of the crazy shit, as far as we know, that some of the other guys did. He just wanted to make really good music, and he incorporated a lot of melody, which none of the other ones were doing, in the early days of black metal. Anthems to the Welcome at Dusk was full of melody, and it's such a powerful and influential album that has inspired the entire melodic black metal scene that we have today. It could be argued that In the Nightside Eclipse is more important than this one, but I really think it just kind of comes down to preference. They're both great albums, just slightly different in the way that they're written and produced. Yeah. My personal favorite is Nightside Eclipse, but, anybody else, I wouldn't be shocked or offended at all if they said Anthems was, their preferred favorite Emperor album.
I think where this really shines is, they kind of set a gold standard for, what symphonic black metal, or, with these massive, epic atmospheres that they created, and, just the technical brilliance behind the playing. You mix all that together, and you really had something special. And it's a perfect example of, when Emperor announces, any sort of show that they're doing, people flock to it. He doesn't really do like full-blown tours, but he'll play one-off shows here or there under the Emperor name. And man, they always super well attended. And it always seems to be, way too far away for me to get to. Yeah. And so it's rather unfortunate. I've never seen Emperor live, and it's definitely one of those bucket list type things.
Yeah, same here. I would absolutely love to see. I would love to see even Isan perform, one of his solo albums or something. I mean, I'm in awe of him as a musician. He's one of the most talented people on the entire planet. I don't think he's put out anything bad in his entire storied career. But the Emperor stuff was truly special because it was at the beginning, and he was doing something unlike what anybody else was doing, even his contemporaries. So can't say enough good things about Emperor in general.
On a side note, do you ever think Emperor will create some new music?
No, he's even said that. He did an interview this year when
he's not going to do it.
When his latest album came out. He did an interview and he was asked that question, and he said, "What would be the point? We've accomplished everything we could with that band, and it was all so near to perfect that anything I do at this point would only tarnish that legacy." So he doesn't want to risk affecting that. He'd rather just keep creating music under his own moniker, because he has a lot more flexibility there.
Yeah, I guess I can appreciate that.
So we'll never get new Emperor music, but we'll continue to get Isan music, which I'm totally okay with. All right, so moving on, the next band is Gorguts and their album Obscura in 1998. Arguably the birth of tech death with this album. Gorguts was around for a while. They did some death metal albums before this one, but I feel like this is the one where they really became tech death as we know it today. And I feel like this is an album that has spawned an entire new subgenre of death metal.
Yeah, it's just, as we go through this list, it's going to be even more like where you see splintering genres and like, before this, everything was just death metal. And now, we've already split that off into melodic death metal and now tech death. And, it's just kind of crazy how bands can take something and just add something a little bit more to it and create something completely new that nobody had thought of before. And Gorguts did that with this album.
Yeah, it definitely is impressive when, they can completely subvert the culture and develop something that is unique and inspires so many other bands to sort of follow suit. All the bands we're talking about are inspirational and innovative. So Gorguts definitely did that with tech death, and I'm glad they did because I love tech death. So the next one is one that Christian picked. This is Blind Guardian, Nightfall in Middle Earth from 1998. I'll let you talk about this one.
Well, this one here is just 100%, it's a groundbreaking concept album. It's inspired by, Tolkien's The Silmarillion, and again, a band that sets like a gold standard for storytelling and in power metal. And, we've had, full-fledged, concept albums before and after, but what they did here was, just so incredible. I mean, this album is a straight up masterpiece. And I think a lot of people would agree that this is, Blind Guardian's best album. And it's just the scope of everything that they did here. And, you would have thought if you're going to go with Tolkien, you're going to go with Lord of the Rings, right? And it kind of shows you Hansi's, nerd side to where he's he wrote a whole album about the Silmarillion, for fuck's sake. Like, where do you go with that? And he told you exactly where to go with it, and it's a album that I still listen to quite frequently. Into the Storm, I absolutely love that song, and just to see where what that spawned going forward, especially in power metal, is super impressive to me. And to me personally, Blind Guardian's one of the best bands on the planet. So,
all right, yeah, I've never been a huge fan of Blind Guardian, but I'm not really drawn to like that classic heavy metal sound or power metal in general, unless it's blackened or deafened or something like that. They have growly vocals with power metal. I'm like, oh, the music's fucking great. Yeah, I'm in. But if it's, clean singing with really high pitched voices, I'm just immediately turned off to it. So, but I mean, it's.
And that actually surprises me that you don't really care for Hansi's vocals, because he doesn't have that high pitched, he's got a little bit of harshness to his vocal style.
Yeah. I don't know what it is.
Not a lot, but
there's something about the tone of his voice has just never really resonated with me. It's too high for my taste, or it's too clean, just in general. I mean, I get what you're saying, because there has been an odd Blind Guardian song I've heard, here and there that I've enjoyed, but every time I sit down to listen to an album, I'm like immediately turned off trying to get through it. It's just not for me, but I can totally appreciate why other people enjoy it. As you mentioned, that's kind of how I feel about power metal.
Yeah.
All right. So moving on, actually looking at my list, I'm going to interject right here. We've been recording for a little over an hour. I said we had 28 albums to get through. I don't know if we can get through all these in like the next 30 minutes. So
I don't think so.
I think what we'll do is we'll break this into a part 2 and a part 3. We'll just do what I said I wish we had done, and we'll go up to 2010 on this one, and then we'll do 2010 to current on part 3. You okay with that? All right.
Yeah, that's fine.
That sounds like a plan.
Yeah, because otherwise this is going to be a 3-hour show.
Yeah, nobody will stick around for that long. So we'll just break it off at 2010. So moving on, the next band we're going to talk about is Linkin Park. Their album Hybrid Theory, which is definitely their most popular album, came out in 2000. They were part of the nu metal movement. One of the first bands that really incorporated like that hip hop rap styling mixed with the metal, mixed with, not really like growly vocals, but there was definitely metal guitar work and drums behind all of the hip hop influences and DJing and clean singing that Chester Bennington did. I liked this album. I mean, I grew up in an era where nu metal was just starting. So, I mean, there were certain albums in that era that I liked. This is one that I enjoyed. Obviously influential, because without Linkin Park, I don't think we would have metalcore as we have it today. They were a huge part of the inspiration of the development between nu metal to what is like popular metal in America today. Those bands wouldn't exist without Linkin Park. And, you know, whether you love them or hate them, they mattered to American metal landscape. You know, I don't really listen to them these days at all because I've outgrown any interest in hip hop. But, you know, back in 2000, this was fine and I enjoyed it. So,
yeah, they were in that group of bands that I was never a fan of. I never got into nu metal. I just couldn't do it. I mean, I listened to a handful of Korn tracks here or there, but I mean, for the most part, I just this here's what I call the dark times or whatever, where I was listening to a lot of older stuff at that point, where, you know, I didn't like this stuff that was, it just wasn't for me.
But it's, I mean, it's still the same today. It's like, you know, what is considered radio friendly metal in America is not music I'm ever going to listen to. I don't listen to Falling in Reverse or Slaughter to Prevail or Motionless in White or whatever 3-word name bands there are out there, because they're all 3-word names. But
just kind of weird.
It is. But all of those bands, you know, evolved from the nu metal scene, I feel like. And it's not that they're inherently bad, because I will occasionally hear a track played at the mall or, you know, on radio somewhere. And it's like, okay, well, this is fine. This is better than hip hop or rap or country, but it's not something I'm going to seek out because it's not as good as real death metal or real black metal. Yeah.
I won't say it's not as good. It's just, it's not as good to me.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's not as good to me. I can totally understand why other people like it, though. And, you know, maybe that's what they are starting with. I mean, everybody begins somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, most of the people that I know that are around my age that love black metal started out listening to nu metal and evolved to the point where they love black metal now. So, I mean, everybody's on a journey, like I said. And, I mean, today's kids, they're starting out with the radio-friendly metalcore stuff and evolving into deathcore, and then maybe evolving into death metal, and then maybe one day we'll see them at the black metal table. It's just an evolution, you know?
Well, and like you said, I don't think anybody starts there. And if there's anybody listening right now that started with grindcore, get a hold of us, because I would be super impressed to find out how that happened.
Yeah, me too.
Because, I mean, that would be something completely out of the ordinary.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine anybody just, you know, hearing Dying Fetus for the first time and being like, wow, this is what I was looking for my entire life, and then just starting with grindcore. I feel like everybody starts with something that's a little bit more accessible and then learns to appreciate less accessible and less accessible music until they get to the point where they can appreciate all of it. You know, we talk about that a lot on previous episodes, but it holds true here too. I mean, there's a reason that these bands are influential, because they have not only inspired new bands, they've also inspired consumers of music to evolve and seek out, you know, heavier or more of a specific type of sound for their own personal enjoyment. And I mean, honestly, Linkin Park was a band that mattered to me in 2000, so they were part of my journey. So no point in hiding it. It's true.
I'll never hide something that I liked. I mean, hey, for those not aware, I'm a huge ABBA fan. So take that for what you want.
Well, the next band is one that I am really not a big fan of either, but you put it on the list. Halloween, the Dark Ride from 2000. So I'll let you talk about that one.
The reason I put Halloween on, well, Halloween, we already know how influential they were back in the 80s, but this album did something completely fucking different. They went super heavy on this album. Have you ever heard this album, The Dark Ride?
I probably have. I've listened to Halloween many times before, and
well, this here was slower, way more aggressive, way more evil sounding. They had like a perfect example is a song called Escalation 666, which you would never figure that would be a track name for a Halloween album before this. And, you know, even the album itself, the cover of the album with just, you know, black and white and, you know, just the evil looking, pumpkin that they have. But yeah, this is just completely different than anything that they did. And I think it spawned, power metal bands trying to go, heavier after this. There's another band that was very similar to them called Nocturnal Rites. And
see, I actually really like Nocturnal Rites.
Yeah, and they had an album, I can't remember what the name of the album is now. It was a green and black cover album, and it was way heavier than anything that they had ever done before. And I'm wondering if that was due to the Halloween the Dark Ride. And I just kind of noticed more and more
Afterlife?
More power metal bands. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And it was just that heavier sound that I think started to seep its way into some of the power metal bands, that they noticed that not everything needs to be super high and flowery. And, I think it was just a tent pole of, hey, if you're playing power metal, you don't have to stay in this exact zone. You can branch out a little bit. Unfortunately, I was kind of hoping that they would stay in this direction, but they did not. And, the next album was, your typical Halloween sound, and which I'm here for too. But
maybe it just wasn't terribly.
I really did like.
Yeah, I mean, it might not have just been what their fans were looking for back in 2000, but even not remembering whether I've listened to it or, how important it could be, the fact that it exists. I mean, it would have to at some point for some established power metal band to push those boundaries and move into the heavier and darker stuff.
Yeah,
because we have bands today like Brimir, which is like, power metal with death metal influences and vocals. I fucking love that. I mean, I love when, you get blackened power metal or you get death growl power metal. Power metal's music has always been impressive to me. I mean, it's always soaring guitars and, great epic feeling music. It's just the vocals that I can't stand. So, when you fix them and you put in something that's blackened or deathy, I'm like, fully committed to it, obviously.
Yeah.
And speaking of death metal, let's move on to our next one. This is probably one of the most influential albums in my entire musical journey. Children of Bodom's Fall of the Reaper from 2001. Man, Children of Bodom were doing something that nobody else was doing back in the 2000s. They were kind of the innovators of like speed metal, mixing death metal with speed the way that Alexi Laiho did. I don't think any other band had done that quite that way before them, at least none that I know of. And this album, I mean, I remember I got my very first speeding ticket listening to this album because I was just like jamming so hard I wasn't paying attention, driving 90 and I was like a 65.
Well, I could definitely see that because I absolutely positively loved this album. And this, as soon as I heard this album, it actually made me go back and buy every single one of their albums. Just, they even had a little bit of power metal influence in there, that added that little bit of the keyboards in there.
Yeah, the keyboard and synths were...
There shouldn't have been keyboards in there. And I got so into this that I even bought Yanni Warman's side project stuff that he was doing, with way more keyboards in it. And that was fantastic too. It's just such a shame what happened to Alexi. Yeah. And apparently he had lots of problems and unfortunately couldn't get help in time. And so, but we still do have some pretty incredible music.
I mean, the first 4 Children of Bodom albums are so good. Oh, they're all so good. Absolutely killer.
So damn good.
And then, the ones that came after Hate Crew Death Roll were just kind of okay. Like he tried to do a lot of like goofy stuff just to, it's almost like they took what they had done before and like tried to blend Andrew WK into it. They made a bunch of party songs and they made a bunch of like, just fun. We're having fun and drinking, kind of songs. And it just didn't really have the same like feel to it. I mean, all of the albums, the first 4 were really fun, but they were fun in a way that like, death metal is fun, not fun in a way that it's like, hey, these are party anthem kind of songs.
Well, I'm not sure if this was a girlfriend of his or whatever. I can't remember her name, but he did some guest writing on an album from a band called Synergy, but spelled Sinergy.
I listened to that band.
Yeah, and that one was really damn good too.
He was a great songwriter, and he was one of the best guitarists that ever lived. I mean, he used to be called the fastest guitarist alive. I mean, he could do things that were just crazy impressive. If you ever watch like close-ups of his finger work, just such a massive guitarist. And it's even more disappointing because the last Children of Bodom album that came out was actually really good. It was kind of a return to form, and then it was even more devastating that we lost Alexi shortly after that because, what could have been, is something we'll never really know. But it's undeniable that Children of Bodom was a massive influence on so many bands, not only because of the keyboard incorporation and the synth work, but also because of the speed of the guitars. I doubt without Children of Bodom existing, tech death would have evolved to what it is as well, because, technical death metal is all about playing as fast as you can typically. And Alexi was a master of that. And I'm sure that you ask any tech death guitarist, he's going to be among their list of inspirational guitar players for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, let's move on to what I know is one of your most important albums, Opeth's Blackwater Park from 2001. I'll let you talk about it since you love it so much.
This here is an album that's probably in my top 5 favorite albums of all time. And I would even go so far as to lump Still Life into this as well. They're 1A, 1B as far as quality goes, but, there isn't a single weak track on that entire album. What they did there with the way they blended the progressive metal with death metal while also, redefining what metal could achieve emotionally. Like that album is so emotional, everything about it just screams quality. And when you see that live, I've seen Opeth multiple times, and I'm blown away every single time I see them, even though I know exactly what to expect. But, they're playing the way Michael Ackerfeld writes songs. I'm just here for it. And, this is even better knowing that we got a new Opeth album coming out next week. And it's supposed to be, quote unquote, return to form. We're going back to some harsh vocals.
Growls are back.
I am so here for that. But I'm also of the opinion that, Opeth doesn't have a bad album. So, I'm an Opeth true believer. But Blackwater Park, this cemented Opeth as to what they are today. I think that's the album that spawned so many other bands, the technicality in their playing, the longer songs that, that wasn't an instant, death knell for your album. If you had, 10, 12-minute songs, it didn't matter as long as they were interesting and as long as they were good.
Yeah.
And they definitely had that in spades.
Yeah,
I absolutely love Opeth.
I think there's so many bands that wouldn't have developed like a progressive sort of death metal or black metal sound without this particular album. The progressive elements, there's always been prog bands, but typically they were built around, clean music and, rock guitar, not necessarily metal stuff. So the fact that he was the one who incorporated, blackened death metal, growly kind of stuff with the progressive elements, and it was so groundbreaking. Nobody else was really doing anything like that. It showed what was possible, and it definitely led to a lot of the bands that we've talked about this year. They wouldn't have existed without Opeth. So definitely influential.
One thing that gets me about Opeth that kind of annoys me is when people get upset with, when they stopped doing the harsh vocals and they said they were getting a little too flowery, a little too proggy. Well, they were always that proggy. Mm-hmm. There was never a time that they weren't. It's just he stopped with the harsh vocals. That's the only thing that changed. The music itself was still. You can find stuff on Blackwater Park that is a straight sign to prog rock from the 70s. He was super influenced by that, and none of that was any different going forward. It's just no more harsh vocals. So I do get a little annoyed when when they decided to become too prog. Like, no, they never decided to become too prog. They just stopped the harsh singing. That's it.
But there's got to be more people out there like me than I know of that just prefer the harshness. So maybe that's all it is.
And I completely get that. But to me, it almost feels like if that's your only complaint about those albums and you're saying that it's too proggy, that's not what you're actually complaining about, because the prog has always been there.
Right, and that's part of what makes it great. It's whether you enjoy the vocals or not. It's hard to envision that as a real complaint, though, because his cleans are excellent. He's one of the most talented vocalists in metal because his cleans are so good and his growls are so good. So, it's really hard to even sustain that argument. Would I prefer more growls? Absolutely. But do I hate his clean singing? Not at all. It's just, some bands that argument holds up for sure. Yeah. Not necessarily with Opeth.
I mean, Michael Ackerfeld is definitely somebody I'd like to hang out with for an evening. Yeah. He seems like a super interesting guy.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, moving on to your other favorite band, Slipknot. their album Iowa from 2001, definitely an influential album, especially in the modern American metal scene. It's one of the most aggressive new metal albums from that era. It defined what Slipknot was going to be, and it cemented their place in the history of new metal. It was an album that was super important to me back in 2001. It was one that I listened to a lot. I loved this one and I loved their first one. Everything that came after, when they started being a little bit more experimental and rock oriented, I kind of lost interest, I guess. But I sort of lost interest in new metal around that era anyways, because I was learning to love death metal and black metal. But Iowa was a great gateway album for me, and I'm sure it was for a lot of other people as well, because it is just brimming with aggression from beginning to end, and the songwriting's good. And I mean, it is gimmicky, it is new metal, but there's a lot to love about it, and it deserves its place in the most influential list for sure.
I think I've listened to this album a grand total of twice, maybe. Yeah, just not for me.
Yeah. But I mean, that's a product of your time, like we said with the other new metal stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I developed into it and then I developed out of it. But you were already so developed that you couldn't even access it, and that's kind of how I feel about the modern stuff too, But yeah, moving on. The next one is one of your picks, Green Carnation, Light of Day, Day of Darkness from 2001.
Yeah, and if anybody is aware of Green Carnation, I think Carrie's a big Green Carnation fan, but this album was probably the first album that I had ever heard where it was just a single track, and that track was, I want to say it was 60 minutes long. So just a single track, progressive metal, that blended all these super lush atmospheres and super, super heavy riffs. And I think a lot of people forget about this or probably never even heard it. It's a criminally underrated album, but at the same time, it influenced a lot of, people trying to do this as well. These single track or, 2 or 3 tracks on an album, where before this, you're probably talking, every album had to have 8 to 10 songs. And if it didn't have that, then, if it only had 5, it was probably an EP or, whatever. But this here was the first time I'd ever seen a band just do one song. It's 60 minutes and it didn't get boring. Because I'd heard long songs before and, your mind starts to wander, but this here's the very first album I'd ever listened to where it was a single song that was that long and it was super interesting all the way throughout.
Well, I got to say, I've never listened to this particular Green Carnation album. I listened to the latest one that came out like 3 or 4 years ago, and I thought that album was so boring. I had so many friends that were raving about it, and I tried to listen to it like 10 times, and every single time I would listen to like 10 minutes of it, and I would get bored out of my mind. And I would push myself to go through it. And I was like, this has to get better. There has to be something they're seeing they enjoy. And I just never could figure it out. It's just, I think that there's such a division between where our ears are, that their love of doom metal allowed them to enjoy it in a way that I couldn't. And that's just what it is. And I've never gone back and listened to any of their previous stuff, but maybe one day I'll give this one a chance.
I think you might. I think you might like this one. It's hard to say because they've always been that doomy kind of sound. So it just, and I mean, doom is not my thing either, but for some odd reason, this album worked for me.
Well, maybe one day I'll check it out if I ever run out of music to listen to.
Yeah, that's going to happen.
All right, moving on to another one of your picks, Avantasia's The Metal Opera from 2001.
Yep. This here, it was the blending of power metal and a full-blown rock opera, and it kind of became a blueprint for, these supergroup bands, putting together different vocalists. And I think this here's the first time I'd ever heard anybody, that Tobias Sammet had written parts for people. And so like if your character in this story that he's telling was speaking at that time, that's you as the vocalist, no matter what song it's in. So it's not like he just had a vocalist for, this song or that song. Sometimes there'd be 2, 3, 4 vocalists on a single track, depending on, how he's progressing that story. And I honestly think this here is what, spawned, a lot of these supergroups that came up afterwards, just trying to get, like a harsher type of vocal or a guy with a lower register versus, some female vocals with much higher vocals or whatever. But it served the story. It wasn't necessarily serving the song. It served the story, which was something I don't think anybody's ever done before.
Yeah, I could see that. I listened to this album a few times back in the day, and it was enjoyable for the most part. I didn't like everything about it, but I could certainly see where it had influence, like you're talking about, with being story driven versus just a collection of songs. So it's not bad. It's just not something they're not a band that I return to on any sort of regular basis.
And hey, Toby knows how to write a fucking catchy song. I definitely give him that. And hey, Toby, if you're ever listening to this, I want a new Ed Guy album, goddammit. Come on, make it happen.
All right, well, moving on. Next is Agaloc's The Mantle from 2002. Arguably the most important album ever for atmospheric black metal. So, I mean, we talked before that we consider Agaloc to be its own category of like gray metal because they create this like atmosphere. But without them first establishing a way to build music that was primarily driven by atmosphere, I don't think we would have half the bands that I love today. Agaloc was extremely inspirational and led to the creation of so many other bands. I mean, they're still around. They're still touring occasionally. And I mean, they just had a re-release of all their vinyls, which I picked up, which was great because I didn't have them. Their importance can't be denied. If you've never heard Agaloc, start with The Mantle. It's their best album, in my opinion, but all their stuff is pretty good.
If there's one word that I would describe Agaloc as, it's intensity. They just, there's no wasted time on any of their albums. It's concise, it's clear, it's exactly what they wanted to do, and it's so well done. Yeah, I completely agree. You would not have the majority of these atmospheric metal bands without Agaloc.
Yeah. So moving on, the next one you had is Nightwish, Once, from 2004.
Yeah, I'll be completely honest here. I'm not a huge Nightwish fan. I don't really care for, mixing those operatic type vocals with power metal. It just doesn't work for me. But I definitely see how this elevated symphonic metal to new heights. They had super cinematic type compositions. And, adding those operatic vocals, it seemed like it was just telling a bigger story. Now, whether that landed with me or not didn't matter because it landed with a lot of other people because there's a bunch of Nightwish fans out there. Yeah. And, I completely understand what what they rave about when they're talking about this, and it spawned a whole subcategory.
It's arguable that we might not even have bands like Flesh God Apocalypse without Nightwish existing first, right? I mean, the symphonic and operatic stuff that they were doing was so far ahead of its time. And I mean, it doesn't always work, and it's not always something I want to listen to, but it's definitely influenced a lot of other bands to try that sort of stuff in their music. And, I'm all for innovation. So definitely worthy of their inclusion here.
I love symphonic elements in my music.
Yep, me too. So moving on, we have Pig Destroyer, Terrifier from 2004. This was one of the first albums that really sort of blended grindcore with death metal, and they were doing something experimental in that. I've never been the largest fan of grindcore. I mean, I've talked about that before. I'm starting to love it, especially this year. There's been a lot of really great grind death stuff that has come out that has elevated my ear and appreciation for that. But when I first heard this album back in, the 2000s, it didn't really do much for me, but I can appreciate why other people loved it. And it definitely led to some of these bands that I enjoy today. So, can't deny them their place on this list, especially for the innovative way they mix death metal with grindcore. So next we have Orphan Land, Mabul from 2004. This is Christian's.
Yep, Orphan Land, Mabul from 2004. This here is a groundbreaking mix of progressive death metal with that Middle Eastern folk element. And before them, I don't think I'd ever heard that Middle Eastern, that sound added into any sort of metal, actually, and certainly not death metal, paving the way for a lot of the cultural fusion that you would see later on.
Yeah.
And, it was a perfect encapsulation of how metal is so worldwide. This isn't an American thing or a European thing. This is everywhere, even in areas where, religion or whatever could probably get you into trouble with, some of what you're talking about here. So, yeah, I was completely here for it. I'm a big Orphan Land fan. I don't really care for their last few albums, but man, early on, holy shit, was this such a good band, and doing something so different. Yeah, it just really spoke to me, and mixing stuff that you wouldn't normally expect, and I think they definitely opened up, my ears to, metal bands from the Middle East, definitely.
Yeah, and I think we skipped a band that I'm going to kind of toss in here as well while we're talking about Orphan Land and the cultural mixing sort of stuff. But Sentenced obviously was a massively influential band for so many people. And I mean, the album I want to talk about specifically is A Cold White Light because it's their best album. And it came out in 2002, and it was a very strong mixture of progressive death metal with Finnish folk music, which, was something that had never really been done before except by them. So, I mean, it's not really just so much that it's exclusive to the Middle East or whatever. It's just that these bands were sort of doing innovative things by incorporating their own culture into the music in a way that made them stand out from other bands that were doing, more straightforward things or just including melody. And I mean, we still hear that today. It's like Wayfarer. They just put out progressive black metal with country music, like not country, but like Western music built into it. Nobody had done that before. I mean, it's a modern, innovative elevation, but I mean, it wouldn't have happened probably without Orphan Land and Sentenced and other bands like that coming before. So I think it's definitely worth noting these kind of bands that included their cultural music into the death metal. All right, so the next one we have is Mastodon and their album Leviathan from 2004. These guys are probably the most well-known progressive sludge metal band in the world, except for maybe Gojira. Those are the two the two big ones that sort of fall into that stoner rock, sludge, grungy, progressive sort of umbrella. And Leviathan was groundbreaking. There was so much stuff on there that nobody had really heard before. They tried a lot of really unique and interesting things, and definitely inspired a lot of other bands to write similar sort of music. So undeniably an innovative album and one worth mentioning here.
Yeah, I was actually a big fan of this one, and that it actually surprised me because at that time they were also lumped in with like Lamb of God and stuff like that, and I wasn't a big fan of Lamb of God. But this one here, the Mastodon album, really sunk its hooks into me. I really enjoyed this album.
Yeah, me too. And I don't love all the Mastodon albums, but there are some that are way better than others, and this is one of the best ones in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's just excellent. And then the last band we're going to mention, I'm actually going to cut it off at 2005 because we are running a little bit long, is Trivium's Ascendancy. So Trivium, Matthew Heafy, he grew up, playing Metallica at school and stuff like that, and then decided he wanted to start his own band. And I mean, we've talked about metalcore and like whatnot. I feel like Trivium is probably the most important band in the development of what modern metalcore is, because even though he wrote kind of thrashy death metal, growly sort of music, he included so much melody and in a way that was very accessible to the public, which has sort of led to, what you hear today on radio play. Ascendancy is just a great album all around because it's very thrashy and full of death. Less so than some of the later ones. The later ones are definitely more akin to what's played on the radio these days, but I fell in love with Trivium on Ascendancy. Ember to Inferno's amazing. Shogun's probably where they first really started straying into that metalcore territory, but Shogun's also my favorite album of theirs because the songwriting and lyrically, it is one of my favorite albums of all time. It's, War with the Heavens, from a Japanese samurai, and it's very, very cool. But I've always liked Trivium, and their influence on so many bands is completely undeniable. And Matthew Heafy, he is very accessible to his fans. He writes a lot of music and stuff live on Instagram and Twitter and TikTok and things like that. I mean, he runs a podcast, he does YouTube videos, like he's constantly communicating, and I'm sure that there's a lot of bands that we listen to that were inspired by him or have worked with him, and he's always pushing boundaries too. I mean, he did that Ibaraki album with Isan and some other people. Like, he's done a lot of experimental things trying to do, black metal and death metal and thrash metal and modern metalcore, and he's kind of run the whole gamut of metal music. The only thing I think I haven't really seen him do is a power metal album. But I wouldn't be surprised if that's the next thing he comes across with, because he's very prolific and very talented.
Well, I'll have to look into them, because I never really listened to Trivium. Maybe just never got around to it, or it just never seemed like something that it would interest me. But with that glowing recommendation, I might have to give it a listen myself.
I love Trivium. I don't really love their last 2 or 3 albums, but they kind of went on the same pathway as In Flames. Like, as they became more mainstream, their sound changed and became more accessible. And as it became more accessible, they became less enjoyable for me. But their earlier stuff, when they were still somewhat inaccessible, is excellent.
All right.
So, I mean, listen to Ascendancy. It's a very important album. Ember to Inferno is really good too. Shogun, like I said, is my personal favorite of theirs. So, I mean, you could start there. I think, if you like the Japanese culture at all, you'll love it. If you don't, you may not, but it's a great album. And we're actually going to stop there with Trivium. That's 2005, so we'll resume there on part 3, because we still got 20-something albums to talk about, and I'm sure there are more we can add to the list before the next episode.
Yeah, either that or we just talk way too damn much.
Yeah, that's probably it too. But anyways, let's go through our pickups real quick, and then we'll close out the show with our extreme submission. So, you picked up anything cool lately, Christian?
Well, I got my order in from that big Metal Blade sale. You can't beat that. So I got 4 Cattle Decapitation albums, 4 albums from the band Nera. I think I picked up a Dune album, and then I found out it was an EP. The Allegiant album, I got
Apoptosis
along with that. Yeah. Then, of course, the Yatheria album arrived. I put in pre-orders for the new Halo Effect, the new Destruction. If anybody is needing the Testament Practice Which Preach album, it's being re-released on vinyl, along with Death Angel's Art of Dying, a new Fellowship album coming out next week. Got that pre-ordered on vinyl. Yeah, there's tons of stuff coming out.
Okay, well, as for me, I also enjoyed that Metal Blade Xmas sale. It was like an early Christmas thing where they had a bunch of vinyls for $10 each, which is a hell of a deal. I also picked up the rest of the Cattle Decapitation discography I was missing. I picked up that Dune EP. I picked up the WB album, and then a couple more. So I mean, it was a really good sale. Like $10 a record, you really can't beat it. And then a guy in the Blast Beats Vinyl Discord was selling the Paganizer album that just came out for very cheap, and he had a copy of the Resin Tomb album that came out earlier this year that I also really enjoyed. So I snatched both of those up for a great price. So thanks, Brad, for that. And then that's pretty much it as far as what I've been buying lately. I'm going to the Dark Funeral and Guar show tomorrow. And then on Tuesday, I'm going to see the Devastation on the Nation tour. And then on Thursday, I'm going to see Cognitive and Cytotoxin. And then there's one more concert on Saturday, but I can't remember who it is, and I'm not sure if I'm going to go or not. But it's a busy week.
Might be too damn tired.
That's what I said, yeah. Anyways, that does it for pickups. We are running long, so let's just go ahead and move into the extreme submissions. So this week we got a submission from a band called Sparrows. They're actually from Dallas, Texas, just up the road from me. This stuff is great. You know, we had a lot of submissions on the last episode. I think I told you guys we had about 30 bands that sent us music to listen to, and we decided we were going to pick the ones we really liked and just sort of go in order of the way we received them. So Sparrows was the second band that sent us a submission. They put out an EP just called Sparrows. That's the one we chose to play a song from. That came out in 2022. The song we're going to play is called Convulsions from the Earth. This is blackened death metal with a little bit more mellow death sort of stuff kind of blended in certain places. They used to consider themselves to be more of mellow death and metalcore before they evolved into more of a blackened sort of tech death sort of thing. They've done 4 full-length albums since 2012, and somehow I've never heard of them, even though they live, you know, right up the road from me. So I don't know how I missed them, but I'm certainly aware of them now, and I'll be checking out anything they put out. I know they have a new album coming out soon. When they sent me the details, they said, you know, the EP is kind of a precursor to that. So I highly recommend checking that out. It's very, very good. All the songs are great. Christian, you listened to this as well. What did you think?
Yeah, the thing that really struck me about this is, and it actually makes a little bit more sense with what you're saying, that, you know, they used to have a certain sound and now they moved to a different sound, and they're still trying to fully work out exactly what they're doing, because I was getting a lot of influences in their music from quite a few different bands, but not necessarily a big influence from any single band. Like I heard some Wolves in the Throne Room. You know, that band Campfire? I heard a little bit of that in there. There's some Satyricon. There's even some Immortal in there. And there's even a little bit of Bathory in there. So, yeah, and it wasn't like hit you over the head influence. It was just like very small parts and blending all that together. And that's the sound that I really, really enjoy. And so that I was completely in on this album. I absolutely love this, and I'm super looking forward to when they have a full length.
Yeah, me too. And guys, I know you're going to listen to this. I know you're just up the road. You got to do a show in Houston sometime soon so I can come check you guys out. I'll do what I can to help promote it too.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. It's a very fantastic EP, and I'm also very much looking forward to the full album. So again, this is the band Sparrows off of their 2022 EP Sparrows. And the name of the track is Convulsions from the Earth. I hope you guys enjoy it, and we will see you again in a couple of weeks.
See ya.